Hello, and welcome. You're listening to the Just Love Them podcast. I'm your host, Shiree Best. Join me to discover how to stay connected, how to find healing, and how to deepen your relationships with the people you care about who have made different religious choices than you have. Listen up. Today's topic is an important one that may or may not have happened in your family. We're going to talk about an up-and-coming phenomenon that may have never happened with this prevalence in the history of the world before. It's the topic of voluntary family estrangement. Children or siblings or other family members who decide they are no longer willing to be in your life. This has also been called cutting off or leaving the family or going no contact. You may be having this experience. You may not, or you may know someone who's going through this. Either way, it's good to be aware of the trend, some of the causes, and what you can do to give yourself and your family the best possible chance at healthy relationships. Let me say at the outset that there are circumstances when it is legitimately valid for someone to distance themselves from family members. For instance, in the case of physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, severe toxicity, SRA, difficult narcissism, or a variety of other extreme situations where someone might not be safe or where great emotional or physical damage is happening. It can be an important reason for someone to estrange themselves in order to protect themselves and heal. That is not what we're going to talk about today. Today, we are talking about family members who use boundaries as weapons without real or valid reasons. Today's society has made the focus on self, and because there's not the necessity to rely on family in the same way as in generations past, the focus on self can lead to setting boundaries as weapons. You may very well know what I'm talking about. Or you may be asking, Shiree, I have no idea what you mean. Well, let's clarify. An unhealthy boundary, or using a boundary as a weapon, happens when someone sets a boundary in order to get someone else to do what they want. Now, let's be clear. I'm not talking about underage children in your home for who you're responsible. In that circumstance, it is healthy, for example, to set a curfew. And are you trying to get that child to do what you want? Yes. And what you want is their safety and enough sleep to be healthy for both of you. Completely different. When a kid becomes an adult, the whole dynamic changes. When someone sets a boundary with another adult in order to try to control them or to hurt them emotionally, that is when it's unhealthy. If someone's intent is to use a boundary as leverage or to manipulate or control or guilt someone else, that is the misuse of a boundary. On the other hand, a healthy boundary says, this is what I will do, this is what I will not do. There's no ill intent, but instead a boundary is set in order to have a more healthy relationship. For example, yes, I will talk to you on the phone when you call. No, I will not be available between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. That's a healthy boundary. We can set healthy boundaries, but it's important to remember that we have absolutely no control over how the other person will respond to these boundaries. In fact, more and more, instead of a healthy boundary being respected, the healthy boundary precipitates a crisis. The prevalence we're seeing is about healthy boundaries being set, but the child or the sibling or whoever it is doesn't like it, and they set their own boundary, using it as a weapon, and they cut the family members off. This is also happening when no healthy boundary has even been set. The family member cuts themselves off from the family with seemingly no reason. For instance, a parent sets a healthy boundary with a grown child. I will no longer pay your phone bill, or your insurance, or your rent. You need to be responsible for yourself. You need to get a job. And the child says, see ya, I'm never talking to you again. Or one sister says to the other, I can't babysit your kids 24/7 and quit my job to do it. And the other sister says, fine, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And it goes both ways. Sometimes the parent is the one not taking responsibility for what they said or did, or the ways they were trying to control, or the judgments they were giving, either verbally or non-verbally. But sometimes the parent has taken responsibility. This does not mean they're doing everything right, because none of us do everything right all the time. But maybe they apologized for what they said or did. Maybe they were trying to be open. Maybe they were trying to set a healthy boundary and be accepting, and the child cuts them off anyway. What then? And what about when a family member cuts people out of their life for seemingly no reason and with no explanation? Very painful. We all want happy, healthy relationships. Sometimes it's hard to stand back and see clearly what you and they are or are not doing when you're in the middle of it. And while we obviously cannot control what someone else is doing, we can take a look at ourselves and see what we might be doing and how making a positive shift in ourselves may help the situation, if not our own healing, whether you have an estranged family member or not. And if you're feeling very brave, let's take a look inward first and see if there's something on our part that we can shift to better a relationship. Are you willing? It's always brave to be willing to look inward and see if there's something that needs to shift. I would like to offer you some clarity about where you may be at in your relationships. Would you be willing to take a quiz with me here and now to get a little more clarity? Here are 10 questions to help you. For each question, just choose the statement that sounds the most like you. Here we go. Number 1, A, I spend a lot of time thinking about how my loved ones should change. B, I spend more time focusing on my own healing and growth. Number 2, I often judge my loved ones' choices, beliefs, or lifestyles. B, I allow them to make their own choices even when I disagree. Number 3, A, I frequently replay what they have done wrong. Or B, I actively look for ways to understand their perspective. Number 4, A, I believe reconciliation depends mostly on them changing. B, I believe healing can begin with changes I make regardless of their choices. Number 5, A, I hold tightly to expectations about how our relationship should look. B, I'm learning to let go of expectations and accept reality as it is. Number 6, A, I often feel a need to explain, convince, or correct them. Or B, I focus more on listening and understanding than persuading. Number 7, my hurt often shows up as criticism, defensiveness, or resentment. Or B, I try to respond from love even when I feel hurt. Number 8, A, I believe boundaries are mostly a rejection of me. B, I can respect boundaries even when they're painful. Number 9, A, I spend more energy trying to control the outcome. Or B, I spend more energy becoming the kind of person I want to be. Number 10, A, if they called today, I would need them to acknowledge my pain first. Or B, if they called today, I would be willing to simply reconnect and move forward. Okay, let's talk results. And this quiz only works if you were willing to be completely honest with yourself. So I hope you were. If you got mostly A's, you may be responding more from fear, hurt, disappointment, or a desire to control than you realize. That's understandable. Estrangement is painful, but these patterns can unintentionally push healing further away. Your greatest opportunity may be shifting your focus from changing them to healing you. Now, if you got mostly B's, you're likely responding from a healthier foundation of acceptance, personal responsibility, and love. This doesn't mean you agree with your loved one's choices or that the pain is gone. It means you're creating emotional safety and leaving the door open for healing whenever the opportunity comes. If you got a mix of A and B's, most people do. They fall somewhere in the middle. The goal isn't perfection. Simply notice where you are and where you may be holding on to judgment or control or resentment or expectations, and ask yourself, what would love do here? That single question can often move us from fear to healing and from control to connection. You cannot change or control your loved one's choices. You're only in charge of you. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, or if you're familiar with Mel Robbins, you know that this is the let them part. When you're trying to control what you can't, it helps to tell yourself, let them, and let it go. You can't control them anyway, and you may be damaging the relationship even further by trying. How you respond, however, is the let me part. What can you do? What do you have control over? Part of that includes, let me not beat myself up because I wasn't perfect. Let me realize that I did the best I could. Let me be open to what I can change about myself to be more healthy. Let me give them space. Now, you hopefully have some clarity about where you are. But what about the family member who's chosen to leave the family? If it's not for a legitimate reason, physical or emotional safety, like I mentioned at the beginning, here are some possible reasons that a family member might cut off contact. Some people are less likely to accept the work and take responsibility in today's society. There's more of a sense of entitlement. There's a sense that they don't want to have to do anything hard. They might step out of the relationship because they're not getting everything they want when they think they should. They may believe that you're there to make life happen for them, and they shouldn't have to contribute to either the family or the relationship, especially if it requires more work than they want to do. Another reason is that they may feel judged. This could stem from real or perceived judgments that may or may not be happening. But for them, especially family members who have chosen to leave the church, they have made a different choice and they're now feeling uncomfortable. And they feel better about leaving than they do about feeling uncomfortable. Oftentimes, what's deep inside is guilt, but what comes out is blame. They cannot accept responsibility, and so they must blame someone else. And you're it. It's a coping mechanism. They may say, I don't like that you don't like how I'm living my life, so I'm out. A third reason is social media. Now, I do not believe that we can blame social media for this issue, but it has been identified as a contributing factor. Platforms often promote messages like, you don't owe anyone anything, protect your peace, cut off toxic people. And these messages can be helpful in extreme circumstances, but can be harmful when applied to ordinary family conflict, and has sometimes led people to label normal family imperfections as toxic. Another reason, higher emotional expectations. Many adult children today expect emotional validation, acceptance, and psychological safety from parents in a way that previous generations did not. When those expectations are not met, disappointment can lead to estrangement. Today's generation has a greater tendency to confront old wounds than previous generations. Adult children may look at their childhood experiences through a different lens, and either out of pain or guilt or lack of being able to forgive or some other reason, they decide they need distance. The culture has shifted from a tendency to keep wounds inside or work through them on the side while keeping the relationship going to being more confrontative about the past and more volatile when the confrontation does not go to the person's liking or expectations. A fifth reason is polarization. Because of the ease of communication in today's world, political, religious, and cultural divides have become deeply tied to identity. Disagreements can often feel existential rather than merely intellectual. People may experience a difference of opinion as a threat to who they are rather than simply a different idea. Let's talk about the difference between existential and intellectual for a minute. In an intellectual disagreement, the person thinks, you see it one way and I see it another. In an existential disagreement, a person feels, if you reject my beliefs, you're rejecting me. If you're right, my entire worldview might be wrong. Your choices threaten my sense of identity, safety, and purpose. This existential view is especially common currently with deeply held beliefs that involve religion, politics, morality, parenting, identity, and lifestyle choices. In the context of family estrangement, when an adult child leaves a shared faith, the parent may think, I'm worried about your spiritual well being. But the child may hear, you don't accept who I am. Or the child may think, I simply believe differently now. But the parent may experience it as, everything I taught and devoted my life to has now been rejected. The disagreement is no longer about ideas. It feels like a threat to a person's identity, belonging, meaning, or sense of self. Other reasons may include that estrangement is more likely to occur when religious differences become intertwined with conflicts over grandchildren, again, political or identity issues, and long-standing relationship wounds that predated the faith transition. In many families, the religion itself is not the deepest issue. The deeper issue is often that each side feels misunderstood, rejected, and unsafe. Regardless of the reason, you cannot stop someone else from estranging themselves from the family. So what do we do if this happens? Here are some things that may help. I'm going to suggest 3 things not to do and 4 things to do. First, the don'ts. First of all, don't chase. Pursuing desperately, arguing, defending yourself endlessly, or demanding reconciliation usually backfires. Like chasing an animal, they're only going to run away faster. Either that or they're going to stop and fight back viciously. Neither one is a good option, so don't chase. Next, don't retaliate. When kids cut their parents off, sometimes a parent responds by removing the child from the will, or publicly criticizing them, or talking about and trying to turn siblings against them, or sending guilt-inducing messages. These responses almost always deepen the divide. Retaliating does the opposite from healing the rift. In fact, it gives the other person evidence as to why they were justified in taking the extreme action they've taken. And it will be that much harder to heal from the estrangement. Don't retaliate. And third, don't beat yourself up. I find there are 2 kinds of people generally. The perfectionists, those who overly try and work super, super hard, and the people who just want to do the bare minimum. Take missionaries, for example. A mission president or a visiting authority gets up to speak and tells the missionaries, get out of bed on time, keep the rules, work hard. For the perfectionist missionary, they interpret that to mean they need to do more, work harder, and they beat themselves up and they develop anxiety because they can't do it well enough. But what they don't realize is that the visiting authority wasn't speaking to them at all. They were speaking to the missionary who just wants to do the bare minimum. So if you are that perfectionist parent who tries and tries and tries and works super hard, don't develop anxiety by beating yourself up. You're doing great. The best parents let go of control and needing their loved ones to show up a certain way. That's not our job. Just love them and stop beating yourself up. Those are my 3 things not to do. Now, here are 4 things to do that may help. First, stay open. Send the other person the message. I love you. I respect your need for space. If you ever want to reconnect, my door is open. Because they may not be allowing contact, you might not be able to tell this to them in person. You may not be able to text this to them. You may not even be able to write this to them in a letter. They might likely tear it up without reading it. So how do you send that message? There are some less conventional ways. Some might be a little bit woo-woo, but stay open. You can send that message energetically just by thinking it in your mind and visualizing that message reaching them. You can also imagine that they are there with you, maybe while you're driving in a car and they're sitting next to you. And you can actually say out loud, I love you. I respect your need for space. If you ever want to reconnect, my door is open. Okay, I told you they were a little woo-woo, but don't knock it until you try it. Energy is a real thing. And you can always do things like praying for them. When you truly change your mindset to be open to this message, to really mean what you're saying, you never know what might happen. Pastor Aubrey L. White talks about how in the story of the prodigal son, the prodigal left a house with standards. He says, quote, "We love the prodigal son's homecoming, but we skip over why he left. The far country didn't recruit him. The father's house had standards, and he wanted his inheritance without his father's authority. So he took the blessing and cut the contact." Sound familiar? And notice what the father did not do. He did not chase the boy down to renegotiate the house rules. He did not send servants to the far country with apologies for raising him right. He did not lower a single standard to win him back. He grieved. He watched the road. And he stayed exactly who he was. Because here's the truth the far country eventually teaches everyone. The standards you ran from become the home you run back to. When the boy came to himself, he didn't say, "My father finally changed." He said, "I will arise and go to my father." The father never moved. The son did. Unquote. So stay open. Second, get curious. When a child cuts off contact, most parents naturally ask, "How could they do this to me?" Or, "After everything I've done for them?" Those questions are understandable, but they keep our focus on our own pain. Curiosity asks a different question. What experience are they having that led them to believe distance was necessary? Notice this is not the same as asking whether or not they are right. It simply tries to understand what makes their decision make sense to their perspective. For example, an adult child may say, "I don't feel safe with my parents," and we can respond with defensively or out of curiosity. A defensive response says, "But we never abused you." A curious response says, "Help me understand what unsafe means to you." You may discover that they are talking about feeling judged, misunderstood, criticized, or unable to be themselves. Curiosity is not an agreement, and it's not accepting blame for everything that went wrong either. It's information gathering. When a child says, "You never accepted me," a defensive response says, "That's ridiculous. We sacrificed everything for you." A curiosity response says, "Can you help me understand what acceptance would have looked like for you?" One response starts an argument. The other response opens a conversation. You can listen to your child's experience without agreeing with all their conclusions. In fact, understanding their experience is often the first step toward healing. One of the most powerful questions a parent can ask is, "What was it like to be my son?" Or, "What was it like to be my daughter?" Then simply listen. Don't explain. Don't defend. Don't correct. Don't fact check. And it can be very hard not to do that. Many estranged adult children are not waiting for their parents to agree with all their choices. They're waiting to feel understood. There's a profound difference between saying, "I see it exactly the way you do," and "I can see why you experienced it that way." The first is an agreement. The second is empathy. And empathy is often what begins rebuilding trust. Curiosity says, "Help me understand this experience." Defensiveness says, "Let me explain why your experience is wrong." When parents are hurting, the urge to defend themselves is so completely natural. But healing rarely begins when people feel corrected. It often begins when they feel heard. Ironically, the more a parent tries to prove they were a good parent, the less understood the child may feel. Crazy, right? The more a parent seeks to understand, the safer the relationship often becomes. You don't have to agree with someone's story to be curious about it. You don't have to accept all their conclusions to care about their experience. This perspective allows parents to remain true to their own values and beliefs while creating space for empathy, connection, and sometimes, hopefully, reconciliation. So stay curious. Third, love them without trying to control them. Many parents unknowingly continue to try to control and influence their adult children through pressure, advice, testimony, correction, and emotional appeals. The paradox is that influence tends to return only after control is released. And sometimes it's hard to stop bossing our family members, especially our kids, when they grow up. We may not even realize we're doing it. We're so used to it, it just seems natural. That filter that we have for everyone else just goes missing when we're talking to our own family members. No filter. Think about it like this next time you're having a conversation with an adult family member, especially a child. Pretend they're your neighbor. If you wouldn't say it to your neighbor, you may want to think twice about saying it to your adult child or other family member. Instead, just accept and love them for who they are. And fourth, heal yourself. Parents often put their lives on hold while waiting for reconciliation. The healthiest parents I've seen continue to build meaningful lives of their own, strengthen their marriages, develop friendships, serve others, and grow spiritually. They leave the door open without sitting beside it every day wringing their hands. Another quote by Pastor Aubrey L. White. I just love this man's words. He calls this a word to the parent watching the road. This is still about the prodigal son story. Quote, if you've examined your heart before God, owned what was truly yours to own, and still find that your child's charge against you amounts to that you wouldn't bend, then let me pastor you for a moment. You're not crazy and you did not fall. Faithfulness that gets punished is still faithfulness. The Father in heaven knows something about children who walk away from a perfect parent. Eden proves that even flawless parenting doesn't guarantee a child stays. Their leaving is not your verdict. Don't chase and don't change. Keep your door closed to disrespect, but never locked to repentance. Stay reachable, stay righteous, stay you. Because if you abandon your convictions to recover the relationship, you'll have nothing left to give them when they finally come to themselves. And keep watching the road. The same God who turned a pig pen into a pulpit of repentance is still working in the far country. Prayers outlive estrangement. Seeds outlast silence. The word you planted is still in them, and his word does not return void. Unquote. Watch the road. Pray for the person, but don't sit beside it wringing your hands. Heal yourself. That's it. 3 what not to do's and 4 what to do's. Don't chase, don't retaliate, and don't beat yourself up. But do stay open. Do get curious. Do love them without trying to control them. And do heal yourself. Well, I've given you an earful today. I invite you to take just one thing that resonated for you and turn it into an action. In addition, who do you know that needs to hear this? Please share this episode with them. And please join me again next time for another episode of Just Love Them.